Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel and happy November. That means happy NaNoWriMo, happy Nonfiction November, and happy Native American Heritage Month. All that's going on in November. So, lots of things to talk about with books I'm reading and the book I'm writing, which is very exciting. If you liked the April vlog challenge that I did, take a peek. There's a new vlog up today for my Nano first week experience. So hit that up. I just included it in the same playlist because they're all author related shorts. So a lot of short, fun things to look at. But yes, my name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and you're here on Booktube with me on a Wednesday. And as usual, it's a Wednesday wrap up. I'm doing those about every 2 weeks now. And I've got 6 books for you today, which easily, not per usual, divides into 2 nice piles. So hopefully no clattering of books falling to the floor during this stream. I almost finished the 7th. I have 25 minutes left of like a 12-hour audiobook, and I just couldn't get to it because my mind was rushing around too many places. So I had put that on my thumbnail, and unfortunately, Carolyn Choate was looking at that and said, "Ooh, that one looks very intriguing." And I thought, that's the one I didn't get to, and I had to replace with the one that I did finish, which is also very good. So no disappointment. But yeah, I just thought I'd be walking and listening more than I would reading, but that's not how this weekend played out. So 6 books, not the one you maybe were expecting, but some good ones and some not so good ones. So yeah, you'll have to wait for another week or 2 for me to finish Sign for Home by Blair Fell. But 91% done, and it's really, really good. And I can't figure out like the ending. They're still like in peril. So I can't figure it out. That's good. Don't want to put it down. But here we are. Let me say hello to the people who have stopped in already at the beginning here. We've got Leslie from Bookskers and Purrs. Heidi ho, I gave her my Wilson greeting here. My thumbnail has a lot of dark covers for October, which I thought was funny. Shannon stopped in to say hello. Super busy day. I totally get it. Felicia is here to say hi, and lovely to see you. And then Jocelyn, hello. Jocelyn was on Twitter. Oh yes, retweeted my box set graphic. So if you don't know, I have a new box set out from yesterday. It's the trilogy of historical fiction that I published over 6 years, and 6 years of work. So it's boiled down into an ebook bundle, and it's out, and it's great fall reading. So you can find it basically anywhere, any of my social platforms. But yeah, so let's jump into our books for today. I'm going to start on this side. So first we have, ta-da, An Island at War by Deborah Carr. And as you can tell, probably from the cover, it's about World War II. You see the old-timey planes. But you may be confused by this like seaside island look. What islands are they talking about? Well, it's the Channel Islands. If you've heard of, watched, or read the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, that is the very famous Channel Island that people have probably heard of. This is another Channel Island where the author actually lives. So I think Deborah makes a specialty of writing books based in those places. This is my first of her books that I've read, though, so I'm not entirely sure about that. But I did pick it up because I know of the author. She has a lovely channel here on YouTube, which I follow. And I found it to be very enjoyable World War II fiction. It's got a unique treatment of setting, being set in the Channel Islands and really going into an experience of being occupied during the war with British people. So it wasn't really the resistance that we think of in France. And a unique treatment of format because it's not dual timeline, it's dual POV between 2 sisters. One is in the Channel Islands hosting Nazis in her house, and the other is sent off to live with a relative in London and has to go through the Blitz. And she uses a diary. So you get these 2 You get one first-person viewpoint in London and a third-person viewpoint in Jersey. Yeah, Jersey. Jersey. And so I thought that was really cool too. So yeah, she does a great job of balancing the main character's feelings of loyalty and guilt about how to feel towards the enemy. So that in particular made me think that this would be a really good book club book, because it'll bring up a lot of questions about people's humanity and othering and how communities stay cohesive, because there's a little bit of scapegoating. And since that's sort of the atmosphere we're in right now in many places around the world, that would be really good for discussion and having people think about it, because I think that helps empathy. I think that strengthens our empathy muscles. So I really liked Deborah Carr's An Island at War. So that's the first book. And Emma is on sprints elsewhere, and I'm sure she's endangering her stream by coming in to say hi. Yes, and I love Deborah. And I think I met her channel through yours, so that's great. And Author JC is here to say hello, hello. Yes, joining me for this book wrap-up. We're going to keep chugging on for book number 2. This one's a little longer. It's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is a book that I read for my Patreon book club. And if you're curious, I will pop that link in the chat. I do 3 different tiers on Patreon. I do postcards and book club, and just help me out. So if you want to check it out, those are the different Patreon levels. And my lovely book club reads a book every other month. So I put out a poll, and there's currently a poll out right now for our December book. If you want to vote, even if you're not in the book club, you can still vote. We've got 3 choices. This is the one that won for October. It's billed as a gothic sort of romance, gothic fiction, whimsical vibes, something like that. And I had been recommended Erin Morgenstern many times by many people who knew what I read and liked. And so finally, pulled the trigger and was like, okay, let's read this. If everyone was agreed, everyone was agreed. And I really enjoyed it. So I would say definitely heavy on the whimsy. I thought it was very creative. It's not a shifter or anything. There's just people in an 1890s setting around the world. But it does have a very Fated Mates type of feel because of the setup of the plot. So I would say that this would be really good for fans of Alex Harrow. And here's my caveat. I read Alex Harrow's 10,000 Doors January, and that's what this reminds me of. But I've also heard that a lot of Alex Harrow's books are very different from each other. So just letting you know, my understanding of her writing and her themes is from that book. So if you like that book, I think you would really dig this one. So we've got 2 magic types that are sort of vying for supremacy in this historical fantasy. And they're set up in opposition, but that's not really the focus. The focus is more on these 2 characters who are struggling to wrestle themselves out of the grip of the people who treat them like pawns and make their own destiny, right? So they've been set up in opposition and they need to find a way out of it or win, or what will happen, right? So that's sort of the main struggle, main conflict. So I really liked that theme as in terms of making your own decision, standing on your own 2 feet, finding a way around or through, and the fact that like both characters are trapped in the same way was very compelling to me. So yeah, so that is The Night Circus, and I finally read it and really enjoyed it. So great props to my book club as well. And then for the last book in this group, I returned to a favorite author and series, and I had not read this one before. So many of the Laurie R. King Holmes and Russell books I have read before, but I saw this one and snapped it up because I hadn't read it before. This is Castle Shade. I can't remember where I found it now. It's very far along in the series. It's right after they're in the Riviera, I believe. And Castle Shade refers to a vampire-related Transylvanian political plot. So, as you can see from the dark cover, it's perfect for October. So this was me revisiting a series that I really love. It's sort of a vampire story, but not really. It's just sort of folklore, adding some spice to a narrative. Like, are people serious about this? Is it not? It's not a fantastical novel at all. It's a mystery. And I get my trademark witty voice with Mary Russell. I get my trademark historical rich detail, as well as a very actiony plot. And so it was a very good time as well. It went by very quick because historical mystery in the hands of Laurie R. King, expert level. So that was great for October. And as I said, every Wednesday, I don't have enough to really make a whole wrap up. So I'm doing these every 2 weeks for Wednesday wrap ups this fall. So that was the first batch. And those are the ones that I finished in, or at least tried to finish in October. And then we'll go into November in a second. But I just wanted to remind people of some upcoming events. So speaking of Emma Bennett, I'm going to be on her channel tomorrow to talk about my box set. So there's the announcement in the chat. We're going to talk both about the content in the books that are in the box set. It's an ebook bundle, and also the process of making a box set, because that's why this is new. I repackaged, reformatted, got new covers, and all that stuff. And we did it with the help of Sasha Alsberg, who is a fellow author tuber and now an expert cover designer who works freelance. And so the fantabulous talents of Sasha will definitely come in for some discussion on our stream tomorrow. But I will drop that in case you want to set a notification for that specific stream. I know you don't want to be notified all the time about everything going on, but that one might interest you if you are in publishing. So here we go. I just check the chat again here. JC said, I have to put that one on my list, The Night Circus. Yeah, I think you might like it if you're in the mood for something a little lighter, a little like romancy, but not like gritty. Yeah, it was delightful. Richard also hopping over from Emma's stream with the little stream frog. Very nice to see ya. JC says, I heard Laurie R. King is a really good author. She is really good. She is one of those people who's had such a long-running series that they start to go, okay, I need a change, and like start another series. You would do a standalone here or there, and she's fantastic. So like, I got to be in an interview with her for Mighty Blaze. It was lovely. So yeah, very fun. Kat's in here, popping in to say hello. Boop the like button. Much appreciated, Kat. I think Kat is starting in about 40 minutes with her own sprints, and I will definitely be done by then with my only 6 books this time. And that is just a reminder that the box set has a link, and you can click on that. And Emma's stream coming up tomorrow. I will also be on my friend Mary's Instagram live, but because you can't link that, I'll just let you know. She has a fantastic Instagram channel called Blurb Your Enthusiasm, which if you're British, you will appreciate even more with the pun. So those are my announcements. Okay, so second grouping here, we've got 3 more books, and I'm just going in chronological order. So the next one I finished is my TikTok Made Me Read It entry. This is a cookbook, The Korean Vegan Cookbook by Joanne Lee Molinaro. And you'll see I do have some little reminders of things I want to cook that are Post-its in the book. But it's really more than a cookbook. That's why I bought it. It's a cookbook memoir. So Joanne is someone who I follow on TikTok. The food is gorgeous, but I don't know how much I'm actually going to cook it. I follow her because she edits down these really intense, emotional family stories about being a Korean American, having family that emigrated under really dire circumstances, learning about that history really late, and then having to negotiate from her childhood being a child of immigrants, as well as growing up and coming to terms with some of the things that she was left with because of that situation and that like intergenerational trauma. So she's had a really interesting life, gone from being a hotshot lawyer to being a full-time creator and cookbook writer, and just seems like a really heart-open person who can talk about what she values, what she's learned, how she's gone through, her divorce or like the marathon training. Ben Pick may be interested in that part. And sort of like gotten to the core of what's important to her and just shares that through food, which yes, please. So a lot of that comes through in the memoir, in the cookbook memoir. It's how much writing is it, you might wonder. I mean, there are lots of recipes. There's also gorgeous photography. And in a world where people charge $35 for a hardcover fiction and cookbooks are now $40 and more, this was the $35 hardcover, which I appreciated. So like each section has a longer piece with photos, and then each recipe also has like an introduction that is about her life and like why she includes it. And yeah, even if you don't like vegan food, this is so much more than a vegan cookbook. So yeah, definitely recommend 5 stars. Excellent. Thank you, Joanne, for putting that out in the world. It's good energy. Okay, and then we're going to take a dive from that 5 stars to, what did I read? Oh, I was going to say, I got Korean vegan I waited a long time to buy it because I was like, oh, it's going to be expensive. It's a big hardcover. It's a big, pretty cookbook. I saw it at Up Books after I had recommended that small independent bookstore purchase a copy. So when I went back in, I saw that they had. I thought, oh, well, that's my sign. I should buy it. So I did. And Up Books is a new-ish, I think they're about a year old, independent bookstore in Southeast Portland. So definitely recommend you check them out. They're doing fundraising for Street Books, which provides library books for houseless folks in Portland, and lots of good things. And they're like a community resource as well. So love Up Books. Up. Okay, now from those heights of 5-starness and awesome indie bookstoreness, we have to go to my disappointment, which is Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. This was my Victober pick, and of course I was very ambitious and had like 4 books for Victober, but this is what we got to. And it's a classic that I made 2 notes on, so I'll share the 2 notes with you before I get more general. Okay. So what I noted when I was reading through this was comparing employers' treatment of the governess in this story to colonizers' morality of the time. Ooh, okay. So if you've read Agnes Grey, you know it's kind of like Jane Eyre without the spunk. Like, she's a governess who goes out to one family and they mistreat her and she runs home, and then she goes out to another family and like makes eyes at the curate, and they, I don't know, no spoilers, but it's a romance. So when I was reading this and all the stuff that was going on, thinking about colonizers and everything, I'm thinking about people who are well off, have more than they need income from unseen investments, let's say, spoil their children and hire a governess and then handicap her ability to teach them anything because the child is spoiled and they won't allow any discipline, and then treat the governess like a non-being, like a third-class citizen, like eat on your own, don't have any friends, and never go home, this kind of thing. And like, what was the morality of that time? Let's say 1840s. When things were just transitioning in Britain. The places where there were enslaved people had just had to go through emancipation, 1834 to 1838. So there are no slaves in the British Empire, but they are still apprentices, and in different degrees in different places in the empire, they're still treated horribly and used for free labor, basically, because of the gradualist doctrine of emancipation. And if you want more information about that, read Black Ghost of Empire. It was a 5-star book for me last Wednesday wrap up. Okay, so that was the most interesting piece that I connected. Comparing long passages and little action with smut, except replace with biblical references. Garb August material. Okay, let me translate that for y'all. So there were long passages in here with lots of biblical references. I am not a fan. There wasn't much action. There was a lot of internal talking to self, either talking oneself down or talking oneself up, which can be interesting, but it was sort of just cyclical and it didn't feel very proactive. So I guess I was comparing that with like a smutty book where there's action, and then like a big sort of smutty section where they're talking about sex, except this is just talking about the biblical stuff, which to this audience may have been the exciting part. Like, oh, anyway, it wasn't my cup of tea. It did not have the spunk of a Jane Eyre. And this is my first Anne Bronte, so I don't know that I'll read Tenant of Wildfell Hall next. I'm kind of like, I don't know. Convince me if I'm wrong. Oh, and the other bone I had to pick was that this is a Barnes & Noble classic, and this was not the right edition for me. Because they have notes here that I did not need. And it was just an annoying disruption in the narrative. So, like, asterisk, complacently, obligingly. Things like Agnes, like the Brontes, seems to expect that the main meal of the day will be taken early at 1 o'clock, as was the country style. Tea would be the usual late evening meal, probably served to the children at around 6. When Mr. Bloomfield is away, the family does not dine formally in the evening. So it was like context history, and I didn't need it. And so every time I looked down thinking it would add something, it was just too simple. I already knew it, and I didn't need to be interrupted in my reading. So that was annoying. But not for someone else, just for someone who's already done historical research and has immersed themselves in the 1840s. So unfortunately, Victober failed this year. That's fine. That's fine. Justiva just here saying hello. JC saying congrats. Thank you so much, JC. Appreciate the love. And Justiva says, I never understood recipe books once the internet became so accessible. Beautiful pictures, family stories, like it's the package. So yeah, I would recommend it. Let's see. I'm on to my last book here. So this is going to be one I started in October, and I'm glad because now I can finish it during November, which is both Nonfiction November and Native American Heritage Month, and it fits in both. This is Carrie by Toni Jensen, a memoir of survival on stolen land. So I was telling my friend about this book because I think she would like it, but I was trying to explain what it was about, and I was like 50 pages from the end, and I still couldn't summarize because I didn't know how she was going to tie it together. It's a memoir, but it jumps around in a non-conventional way. And Carrie refers to, and initially, I thought Carrie would be a lot of commentary on gun ownership in the U.S. and sort of violence about that, but it's not strictly about that. That is one of the tent poles, let's say, of her argument about violence. I think Carrie refers more to, in this memoir, herself as a person, Toni, is talking about what she carries with her in the world based on her experience, based on her observation, based on how her body presents. And so I thought this was a very interesting style. So I don't often comment on the style. I don't think I'm very sensitive or nuanced in writing style, but this really jumped out at me. I've got a few excerpts I want to share to give you a bit of a preview of some of the things. And again, I use those sticky notes. I've got some sticking to the side and some sticking up, which are the ones I'm going to read today. So here's one of the style things that I noticed. She's talking about her dad drinking and says, yeah, talking about your dad drinking as a Native person can be a thorny thicket to wade into, right? But when I show him day drinking, then please note there are other day drinkers lined up beside him on their stools. Please note all of them are this thing America calls white. They are all striving to be better at whiteness, at prosperity. They are all failing. They all go home each night to their families with beer on their breath, with pockets a few dollars short. So she's got a short paragraph where she's speaking directly to the reader. And she's trying to explain how to read her book, which I found refreshing. It's direct in a way that I can understand and not feel alienated by. She's explaining her experiences and her recollections, but also explaining why she's including this and not that, or why she's saying something this way and not that way. And I think that is very nuanced and very intentional and just like really, really effective. Let's say that. I really like that. The next excerpt is similar thing. Listen, this is not going to be the kind of story in which someone narrates from a distance the experience of a young man America has decided is black. A young man with a gun pointed toward him, where his body is used to insert narrative tension into what is essentially another person's story. This is not that kind of story. So again, she's instructing the reader how to interpret what she's saying. She has a story about a relative who a neighbor screamed at and like threatened because he was like playing too close or something. And we know that there are lots of stories like this out there, and fiction writers have started putting them in their fiction as well. And I think sometimes, like she says, it's used to insert narrative tension. And that is a call to all of us to examine how we are being either flippant or lazy about the treatment of people that's very unfair, and whether we are demonstrating how unfair it is or just including it because of the knee-jerk reaction we know people will have. I thought that was really valuable. The next excerpt I have is class related. Okay. So she's talking about hustle culture. She says, this is in the early 2000s, and it amuses me nearly 20 years later when people write about the new gig economy, the new second job, the new hustle. There's nothing new, of course, about any of it. What's new is how members of the upper middle class now are part of this experience. Once it's theirs, it's a subject to be studied and written about endlessly. It's a situation, an epidemic, an important cultural shift. And that rang so true for me. And I thought, this is why my friend's really going to like it. This viewpoint of this has been happening before. The people who comment on things, the cultural critics, just never noticed or thought they deserve that. That's okay for them. This is not affecting me until it does, right? And then they came for me, which is really good observations and witnessing. And then the final excerpt I have that we're going to close today with, about on time here. She's talking about a former spouse. And I thought this is really powerful. So I'm going to have to explain a little bit afterwards, but I'll read the paragraph first. I would never have entered into this relationship had I understood he came from safety, from financial, material safety, and denied it to me while I worked and worked, while I carried and carried and carried our child. I would never have hooked my life to any man who came from safety and pretended otherwise. There is no greater betrayal than this pretending. I came from the opposite sort of pretending. I knew in my body its cost. There is no worse life than a pretending life. There is no worse house than a pretending house. I got chills when I read that. The pretending she's talking about is someone who, like me, comes from a background of privilege, of safety, of knowing that if they lose a job, they have a cushion to fall back on. They can move back home. They can move across the country. They've got moving expenses. They're not going to end up with their card being denied and not being able to buy food at a grocery store like she does in the previous scene. Her type of pretending is when you don't have enough, but you pretend you're okay for the neighbors. I think she called it lace curtain Irish, which means you put your best part forward, even though you're crumbling behind the scenes. And I really just appreciated her placing those two together in the context of her relationship and her realizing, oh, he is on this other side and he hasn't clicked into the fact that that is a very different experience. And I just really, really appreciated the things that she was drawing parallels between. She has a lot of work put into short metaphors. So not over the whole course of the book, but in like 10 or so different sections. She talks about some domestic violence, some racial violence, some like violence of like, trafficking and fracking areas, her childhood, her work environments, and like shooter situations when she's a teacher. So there's different aspects, and in each one, she sort of presents a thing and then uses threads from that thing to comment and like use the language really well. So I just, please, yes, read. I really, really appreciated reading this. So that's going on my 5-star list as well. And I just finished that a couple days ago. So excellent recommendation for Native American Heritage Month. But that is my wrap up for today. So thank you everyone for coming by to watch. Like I said, Sign for Home will be next Wednesday or the Wednesday after that, and with my next bundle of books. But I hope to see some of you over on Emma Bennett's channel tomorrow, and we'll talk about my box set and my historical fiction experience and some of those fun things. So that's all. I hope you are all happily reading for your readathons or not a readathon, and happily writing for Nano. I am at 14,000 something. So I'm doing okay. I think I'm above the average line. And yeah, check out the vlogs. I'm pretty proud of the second one. I think I'm improving, but let me know what you think for my week 2 Nano vlog. Other than that, I hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody.